Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Elizabeth and I help you on this channel to build your inner confidence so you can listen to your intuition and read your tarot cards with ease. And today I'm going to continue talking a little bit about doing sessions with clients as a psychic using tarot cards. I've had lots of people saying to me, I want to start seeing clients, and I want to know more about how to do it. And we've talked a little bit about it in my Facebook group. People have been asking questions. And if you want to know the link to my Facebook group and all of those places, have a look down in the comments. All the links are there. The best way to find out is just join my newsletter list, and then I send you an email and it has links to all my goodies. And you get links to free trainings and all sorts of things. So what I want to talk about today is dealing with difficult clients in terms of if you're seeing clients face to face, when you're seeing clients doing your tarot readings. I don't want to talk about online. I really want to talk about face to face, and I think now is a good time because I know in Australia we're all in lockdown, and I'm in lockdown. I don't know what at the moment. I'm feeling very, I don't know. I think I've got cabin fever or something. But I do know that once we sort of come out of this whole COVID thing, and I know the rest of the world certainly has, I think there's going to be an absolute avalanche of people wanting face-to-face sessions. So if you're thinking that that's a pathway you'd like to take in terms of doing tarot readings, then now would be a good time to do your homework, think about the questions you'd like to ask. Ask me lots of things. I mean, there's some things I won't be able to answer because there's country differences, but I know in Australia an awful lot because I've done it for 13 years. So I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about how you manage seeing your clients. Now, in other videos, I've talked about whether you would see face-to-face clients at home or in a room that you pay for. And I think myself, having seen clients at home, I had one instant, and this is really crazy. I had my garden raided at 3 o'clock in the morning. I have a lot of beautiful cactus in my garden. Some of which contain some elements, and I had some people of that persuasion turn up and basically take some cuttings. And where I live, and they did it at 3 o'clock in the morning, and they jumped the fence and they cut a plant that I'd had for quite a long time that take a lot of years to grow because cactus don't grow quickly, and they just sliced it, and it was just horrible. And I feel pretty sure that these people got to know where my garden was from one of my clients. Because I live in a very quiet street. I don't have a lot of through traffic going past of people who would know we were even here. So that was really upsetting. And yeah, I mean, look, I just felt really violated, even though it didn't happen inside, like I wasn't burgled or anything, but it's sort of in your own mind. You just think, what's the next thing? I've been inviting people into my home. Admittedly, my home was fairly well set up. My supervisor, when I was a psychologist, had a fantastic at-home setup. You literally came in the front door. It was what used to be the main bedroom, but he'd set it up as his office, and it had an ensuite toilet. So the person could go into the ensuite toilet if they needed to use the bathroom and didn't have to go into the rest of the house. Now, my house was not too bad. I had the front room, and then at one stage I was counselling in the evening, and I had people in like a little waiting room that I'd set up. And I remember one particularly difficult couple, the guy like paced the hallway up and down, which was really disconcerting. My partner was out the back. I don't think I'd do it again, put it that way. I just don't think I would do it again. I think if I was counseling face to face again, and I'm thinking I'm going to, because I got very bad burnout, and I'm feeling a lot better and feeling like I'd like to, I would get a room somewhere, to cut a long story short. So that's just my experience. I just had a few things happen. I had someone turn up that I inherently, straight away, my radar went off, and I thought, this person's not safe, and they're in my house. Unfortunately, nothing happened, but I was sitting in the session thinking, don't say anything. Don't say anything to set this person off. Don't challenge them. Don't, and out the door. So I was a bit like, I don't think I want to do that again. So to me, you would either get a room somewhere if you can, or a table at an expo. Tables at, if you have psychic expos in your area, that's a really good way. Or there is, of course, the seeing people online, and certain aspects of what I'll talk about today would also apply to online, but I don't want to talk about online. I might sort of talk about that separately, I think. And I have done some videos where I've sort of touched on it. But if you're seeing a client face-to-face, the first thing is you need to make sure, obviously, that you're attracting the right clients. And the first thing that happens when they come in and sit down is straight away you've got a relationship happening between you and the client. And you need to make sure that you don't lose control of the session. Now, with psychics, sessions tend to go for about half an hour. But if you're wanting to combine some counseling into that, you might decide to go for 45 minutes or even an hour. It's up to you how long you think you can hold your concentration, how long you want to work for, and the environment you're in. If you're at an expo, and I'm thinking I'd like to do some readings at an expo with some people from the Tarot Guild who I know go to this particular expo, your sessions would go for half an hour. So the first thing you need to do is get them to pay. That's really important. I've never ever had anyone not pay me. I've had the odd person come in and forget their purse or whatever. Never ever had anyone not pay me, but for your own self-respect and to get that out of the way in the session. If the session goes for the full half hour, you might only have a very short period of time before you've got someone else sitting down. You don't want to be mucking around with money. You want to get that sorted up front. So you get your payment straight up. Also, because you don't want someone looking at you going, well, your session was useless, and not pay you. Because I think all of us as therapists or counselors or psychics struggle with charging for what we do. And there's something about valuing yourself and the talents that you've been born with that should make it okay for you to charge for what you do. Same as a plumber or a hairdresser or anybody else. So get your money up front. Then you'd start the session. Now, what I tend to do is set the boundaries of how you're going to work straight away. So straight away you need to say, our session will go for half an hour. And then usually I'll say something like, I'm going to shuffle the cards. I'm going to get you to cut the deck. Then I will lay the cards out in front of me. I'll explain the cards as I go. I will start to speak. I might ask questions, but I'm kind of putting them out to the universe waiting for an answer. I don't want you to speak until you feel ready to say something. And set it up like that. So you do your session. And then what I do is I'll manage the session for a period of like do the actual reading, and then you need to be aware around about 10 to 15 minutes before you actually get to the end of the session, you need to be saying, we're coming to the end of our session. Do you have any other questions you want to ask me about the reading? Otherwise, if you open that up then, saying, oh, have you got any more questions? They'll come up with a whole new question that's got nothing to do with what you're talking about. And that's a whole new reading. So be ready to answer questions, make it clear. We're coming to the end of our session because you will have clients come and see you. It's inevitable, especially if you're working in your own room that are distressed. And a distressed client is going to be maybe in tears and certainly won't want the session to end. So if you chop it off without giving them warning that the timing is finished, that's where you can start to go over time. And it's important to really hold the session and have clear boundaries, because if people are coming to see you that are desperate, got problems, it's often because they lack confidence, and part of lacking confidence is lacking having clear boundaries and having the confidence to act on those boundaries. So if you're there saying the session will be half an hour, and then let it go for 45 minutes, or an hour, not only are you setting up an expectation that if they come back and see you, they're going to pay you however much for half an hour session and expect an hour. And this is where it's very hard when you work from home, unless you back your clients in one after the other, to stick to time. It can be so tempting. I remember when I worked in agency, it was like I knew the next client was coming through because they'd booked them in. I used to have 6 and 8 clients a day and they'd booked them in. So I knew I had to get the client out. But when you're at home, you can pace yourself a little bit more, and it can be really tempting when someone's really upset to give them extra time. You need to hold that session. If you're fair in what you charge, if you've had a good session where they've been engaged, you'll have given them enough. Remember that there's only so much we can absorb as well. And if you do an extra long session and they take in lots, it can be really difficult for them to remember and retain everything you've said. Now, in psychic sessions, we often record the session and send the recording to the clients so they can listen to it again, which I think is super helpful. We didn't do that a lot in when I worked as a psychic here as a psychologist here in Australia, because there were so many rules around the recording and the security of the recording and that sort of thing that we tended to kind of have as one of our rules that people were not allowed to record the session. But to me now, if someone came in and recorded it, it wouldn't bother me, because it's part of being a psychic, and the rules around being a psychic, the legalities around it are a little bit different, at least here in Australia. But I won't speak, for the rest of the world, because it's different everywhere. So you need to be holding your client. So about 10 to 15 minutes before the end, and this is where it can be good to have, I know when I'd go to expos, they'd sort of have a little clock facing them on the table so they could see the time and I'd see them set the clock when you start, and they can see the time going down on the little timer, and then at the end it would go zing, which is great because it's kind of like a you're finished kind of signal. But if you're leading your client into the ending, when that little buzzer goes off, if that's the way you choose to do things, they won't be shocked. But also, you don't have to do it that way. You can just have your clock there that you see the timing go down. So you're preparing them for the end. Be certain to say, as I said, any questions about the reading, and then be ready to talk to them about how they're feeling, and you'll be able to gauge from the session. Now, if you have somebody at an expo that comes to see you, and that's how you read, you go to expos, it's all in fun, they come and see you. I know there's a lady I go and see that is so talented, and I sit down in front of her, and the one time, I think the last time I went and saw her before the pandemic, I actually said to her, I'm studying the tarot, and she was like, because I think she was worried that I was going to look at the cards and know more than she did or something. I don't know. I just said, look, just do it. I don't care. I've come to see you because you've read for me before and you're very insightful. And she was amazing, and she did an amazing reading for me. She's just amazing. And so, I go and see her when I go to that expo. Like, she gave me her card. So be prepared at the end. If someone's very upset, usually that would be more likely to occur if you're seeing someone face to face in rooms somewhere. To be talking to them about when they'd like to come back and see you. Or just be prepared to ask the question, would you like to book another appointment with me? And I know that can seem pushy, but people often don't think of that. So it's a bit like when you go into McDonald's and they say, would you like fries with that? It's ensuring that you are, if you put your business hat on, maximizing every client that comes and sees you to see if they'd like to come back and have another session. But it's also a service-based thing, because people will walk out and go, oh, I meant to book another appointment, or they mean to and then they forget and they don't do it and all of that. So asking the question, you can, as you get more confidence seeing clients, ask the question. As a psychologist, I used to do it all the time. But I used to say it with more authority. I think we need another session, because I had my psychologist hat on. Or you can hand them a card. A really nice way to do it as a psychic is to say, here's my card. If you feel like booking with me again, my number and ways to contact me is on my card. And that way you're opening the door and saying, yes, I'll see you again. You're talking about it at the end of the session without being too pushy, and you're giving them the tools to make that happen. So they don't walk out and go, what was her name again? Oh, how do I find her? I can't find her on Facebook. I've typed in a million things. I can't find her on the web. Oh, no. So you're looking at ways to ensure that you are, looking after yourself, and I always say look after yourself, because if you don't look after yourself, you can't be there for the people who need you the most. But also looking after your client and having that real routine that you get into. And if you're very new to reading, I would encourage you to practice it with friends. Say, I'm doing a half-hour reading. I'm going to practice. I take the money at the beginning. I do a little bit of a description about how I read and the process of what we're going to do. And then 10 minutes before the end, I'm going to start saying, we're getting towards the end of our reading. Is there any more questions that you would like to ask about the reading? Now, what always happens, it always happens, especially if you have an upset client, is as they leave, they'll have their hand on the door, especially if you're in a counselling room. They'll have their hand on the door and they'll turn around and they'll ask you a whopping clanger of a question. And this is where you need to have set up the whole process of how they can see you again. If you haven't set that up, then you're like, oh my goodness, I've got to start talking to them about how, like booking another appointment right when you're trying to swap over to the next person. So when they say that to you, a whole new question, and usually it's a clanger, something that you just think, oh, I wish they'd asked me that in the session. Why didn't they ask me? We could have looked at the cards. I could have talked to them about it. I could have helped them unpack it. What you say is, sounds like you need another session. If you look on the card I've given you, all the information's there for you to book with me, or we can book now, and make sure you have some sort of way of booking. I mean, back in the good old days when I was working in agency, we used paper diaries. Can you believe it? We used a paper diary, and we would book all our clients in, put all their times in, and then at the end of the day, I would take my diary downstairs. How old-fashioned is this? And put my diary in my pigeonhole about, I think 3 o'clock, it had to be down there. sometimes later, but the agency was always open later and I only did one evening a week. And then they would look at the appointments, and we didn't take appointments before 10 o'clock, or at least I didn't. I don't think I came in at 10. So they had time to look at my diary. They would transcribe the appointments into the central database thingy they had on the computer. So they knew who was where, so they could book new appointments in, and they knew who was doing what. I mean, it was just insane. The whole thing was insane when I think back. But if it's just you can use a paper-based diary to book someone in straight away. Or you can have software. Now, this is the absolute fantastic. You can have software like Acuity that you set up. It'll have your disclaimers in it. It'll have who you read for. It'll have the length of readings you do and the timings, and it will take your payment for you online. Which means if you're talking to a client and they've got their hand on the door and they say, and you go, well, sounds like you need another session. You can have your iPad, you can have your mobile phone, you can have your computer, your laptop, your whatever, and you can just do it. Click, 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 click. And I'm pretty sure if they've put their details into Acuity, it is super easy to put them in and book them in again, because you can look them up and just put them in. So, and you get the payment on the spot. So then you've got the payment before the next session, which was a whole thing I couldn't do when I worked in the medical industry, because they just would not allow us to charge for bulk sessions. You can even set up packs where people can order several sessions and use them. But you can get that payment up front. And believe me, it's really important. Why do I say it's important to get the payment up front? Because I'll give you an example. When I was working in private practice, I used to always overbook my days, which is a recipe for burnout, because I'd have days where everyone would turn up, 8 hours of counselling later, 8 hours, 8 different people telling me awful things that had happened in their lives, and very short breaks in between. But I would have to overbook because I couldn't charge in advance because people wouldn't turn up. So if you're going to be paying for a room to counsel in, you need to know you can get clients, which is a whole other scenario. But if you've got them all paid for in advance, you then need to have a cancellation policy where you keep a portion of that money because you're paying for the room. And you'll know very quickly if you can afford to continue, because you're either going to have a full diary or you won't. So really that whole thing of using online, I think is really powerful, and being set up in some way. Now you can have a PayPal account set up. You don't have to use Acuity. You can use a paper diary and a PayPal account and have just use an email address and get people to transfer the money on the spot into your PayPal account. Now, yes, I know PayPal takes a percentage and all of that, but, and look, I've had people say to me, if you give your bank account, people can't do anything with it, blah, 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 but I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I had an infraction on my account not so long ago. It's too scary. It's too annoying when it happens. You've got to shut everything down. You've got to get new cards and all of that rubbish. Much, much easier to just use PayPal, and yes, you lose a percentage of it. Well, just make sure you allow for that in charging for your sessions. And if you're good, people will pay. I promise you, they will. I discovered that when I was working for myself in both as a psychic and when I worked as a psychologist. I put my rates up and people paid it. I was like, good. I'll keep doing that. Because ultimately, if it's what you do as your job, you've got to pay the bills, you know. And people need to recognize that's part of boundaries as well. People need to recognize that you've worked really hard, whether it's listening to my YouTube videos, reading books to learn the cards, practicing with friends. You've worked really hard to get the skills that you have. And that's worth something. And it's clearly worth something to them if they want to sit with you and have you share your wisdom with them. So I hope that's helpful to you. I've covered the beginning of the session, the middle of the session, setting yourself up, and then the sort of the ending, how you ended off. As you practice, you'll get better and better at it, and it just becomes second nature. When you first start, you're like, oh, I've got to remember to do this, and I've got to remember to say that, and I've got to remember, and then 10 minutes before the end, I've got to remember. I remember when I was first seeing people professionally, I think I'd be watching, I'd have a clock behind me, and I'd be thinking, 10 minutes before the end, right, I've got to start gearing them up to leave. But then it was funny, I got used to the hour of how long clients were with me. I just got used to it. And I knew when it was getting towards the end of the session, I just knew, I could just feel it. And I just did it. And that comes with practice. Practice, 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 practice. So I hope you found that helpful. Let me know if there's other topics you want me to talk about. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and let me know in the comments if there's other topics you want me to talk about, because I've got lots and lots of knowledge and I'd love to be able to share it for you here on my YouTube channel. Take care, everybody, and I will see you in the next video where I'm planning to do some more theory about the tarot and talking about the Emperor card. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.